Hi, I'm Phil Spencer, and welcome to the Move IQ podcast home selling series, the only podcast series dedicated to help you sell your property. This season is sponsored by Go2 Group, who have a concierge service that can help you with all you need, from choosing the right agent, mortgage advisor, solicitor, surveyor, even removals. Plus, using Go2 online auctions or their committed buyer service to sell your home can give you certainty and peace of mind. We've added a link below so you can connect with them. Enjoy the podcast and hope you find it useful. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in once again to the Move IQ Property Podcast. It's season 3, and I'm delighted to bring you a bonus episode today on how to use an online auction to sell your home. With the demand for a more modern digital approach to selling property, it is actually an increasingly popular option for people selling their homes in the UK. So we wanted to delve a bit deeper and give you the detail that you need on how to sell your home in an online auction and whether that is an appropriate or suitable thing. So I'm really pleased to be joined today by Alex Willis, who runs the online auction part of the Go2 Group. Alex, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really curious to learn all about the online auction, because I'll be perfectly honest, I don't have experience on it, and I'm intrigued to hear more and to I guess, should we kick off with how long the online auction system or ability has been around, and how you guys got involved?
Absolutely. So, hi Phil, hi audience. Absolute pleasure to be speaking to you today. In terms of the online auction space, it has been in operation for around 8 years now, but we really are seeing it grow and develop into a bit more of a prominent route to sale over the last 2 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. So we effectively as a business got involved in it and launched the service in January 2019. And I think whether it's just the sort of the consumers becoming more aware of it as an offering, or just the market dictating that auction could actually be a better route to sell for their situation, we are seeing it take up more and more on the market. Mm-hmm. Effectively now it accounts for probably 3 to 5% of transactions, with normal sort of sales that you would see over here.
So sort of historically people think of, and I'm not just talking digital auctions or online auctions, I'm talking traditional go to the auction room in the back of the hotel. Historically people have thought it's for kind of repossessions or investor-owned properties or pubs or developments, that kind of thing, but that's not really the case any longer, is it?
No, and you're absolutely right. And where we're coming with the online auction is we're almost having to get rid of some of those misconceptions that people have with auctions. So there are 2 routes or 2 types of auctions. There's what's termed unconditional auction, which is what people might be used to when they look at, when they're watching Homes Under the Hammer, for example.
What? Never heard of
it. Sorry about that. But effectively, one day a month, there's a number of properties that are put up for auction in a room or a football club, and people will be able to bid and buy within the room. And within that type of auction, it's as soon as the gavel goes down, it's an immediate exchange of contracts, and there will be a 28-day window to completion. And the buyer will have to put down 10% to secure the property. Now, with what we're doing with the modern method of auction, it's what's termed as a conditional auction. So with the conditional auction, there is, from the gavel going down, there is a 56-day window to completion from the draft contract being received as well.
But when the gavel goes down, that's exchange, deposit needs to be transferred?
No, so
okay.
It's not a deposit. So upon the virtual gavel going down, let's call it,
yeah.
The winning buyer will have to put down a non-refundable buyer's premium. Mm-hmm. That will effectively secure them the property, and that amount of money falls outside of what they bought the property for.
Okay.
Effectively, they're financially committing to the property and seeing it through from that point. Mm-hmm. But importantly, there is a 56-day window to completion.
Okay.
Which means that unlike your unconditional auction, where it's tend to be cash buyers, investors, and quite a sort of pigeonhole group of buyers, the modern method of auction lends itself to people that can buy with a mortgage, and really opens up the market to more potential buyers through that route.
What kind of a percentage does the buyer have to put down?
So it's usually I mean, there's varying models out there.
Okay.
On the business that sits behind the auction. So then, we've heard up to 4.2% of the sale price being a non-refundable amount that's put down. So for example, a 500 grand auction, that can account for maybe £18,000 that the buyer has done outside of what they buy it for.
Yes.
With ourselves, we operate off a fixed amount, and usually depending on the property or the agent that we're working with, that will sit in between maybe £5,000 plus VAT, £8,000 plus VAT as a fixed cost, regardless of property value.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the buyer committed.
Correct.
Does the seller commit in any way?
The seller commits at the point of them, for example, with ourselves, we have obviously educate and we take them through what the process entails. For them to instruct auction, they will complete what's called an authority to auction contract, which effectively means that they're signing up to sell their property under auction conditions.
Yeah.
And that generally will be a 60 or 90 day sole selling rights contract. Okay. Which means that they're committed to sell through that method, and effectively any buyer that comes to purchase the property has to put down that they can't list it another way or sell it to a buyer outside of auction conditions effectively. Okay. So they're committed contractually. Yeah. So if they end up within transaction pulling out and reneging the deal, because they signed the contract, that amount of money could they could be liable for that because of the fact that they've reneged on it. Yeah.
And from the buyer's perspective, so they put down a non-refundable amount that doesn't go towards the property, or indeed to the owner of the property. If there are problems in a survey or in the title deeds or something, what would be the state then?
Really good point. And we do have, the aim of what we're trying to do is provide commitment for that seller. So we ultimately want to open it up to a buyer who is going to commit to securing that property and completing on it. But, if we have a buyer who, they want to put a caveat on the money they're putting down, then we can obviously entertain those conversations. So generally the two caveats we would enter into would be if they have a survey carried out and there are serious structural issues or serious issues with the property, or if they're unable to obtain a mortgage on that point, then effectively, if that's in the contract upon them signing the buying the property, then we can refund the money at that point.
But they can't be asking you to refund the money if they decided that the windows are rotten or it needs re-roofing or something, because they could have seen that on the viewing.
Absolutely. So this is very much, unless there is a caveat in there, this is very much a buyer beware situation. Yeah. Effectively, they have a lead up time to bidding on that property. So from the point it comes to market, there's a 30-day window to the end of that first auction. Okay. They can view the property, they can do a level of due diligence, and really, really importantly, upon a property going into auction, a legal pack is ordered and created up front upon instruction. So therefore, a buyer upon bidding should be able to see a lot of information about the property up front. Right. They really are going in with their eyes open. Right. And actually, from that point, if they put down the money to secure the property and decide they don't want it a few weeks down the line for varying reasons, then it is a non-refundable buyer's premium. But that's good for the seller to know in the situation that they have got that committed buyer. Yeah.
And is it free for the sellers then? So the buyers are actually paying the fees, the agent's fees, your fees?
Yeah, so for the seller, again, it can vary dependent on, agent to agent or different situations. But effectively from ourselves as an auction house point of view, there's no additional cost to that seller. There's no cost to pay. So that includes the legal pack that's created. Okay. Desktop valuation on every property that comes over to us, so a renewed understanding of what it's worth in the market, we put it on the market for, so that it is a no-cost option for them to sell the property.
And what kind of people come to you? Who does it suit best, do you think, as a seller?
I think ultimately it's really geared towards motivated sellers. So there is motivation to move, and there's a motivation for them to have speed and security behind that move.
Yeah.
So ultimately, there are certain types of sellers that will fit that.
Well, I think increasingly in the market at the moment, it is the certainty that is very difficult to go out and get, and that has value.
Absolutely. And I think over the last few months, we have seen the demand for people wanting that speed and security.
Absolutely.
Massively. So, whether it was, at the moment we're in this point where there is a countdown clock to the stamp duty deadline.
Mm-hmm.
So effectively, if someone wants a quicker transaction and to have the security of knowing it's going to go ahead and negotiate on the onward purchase, then this is a really, it's a really good option for them. But in terms of the types of sellers we tend to see that come down this route, it's generally people that want speed. So it may be that they're relocating at a certain date, or they need to move quickly because of financial reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Be that we work with a lot of people on probate properties. Yeah. If you have more than one person that it has an interested property, then effectively the reserve price can be an agreed price that it's sold for, and it just cuts out the And then anyone that has a fall through, and they're coming off the back of their sale falling through, it's a really good option for them to mean next time the buyer that they actually secure is committed and it's not going to happen again. So those kind of things really lend itself to auction alongside, people that are going through a divorce. High demand property is a really interesting one because we actually find people that have a lot of interest in their property, and therefore they put it into an online auction platform to actually have the transparency of the bidding, and the person who ultimately wins that bid puts down the commitment. Yeah. They don't get all that interest for no reason when they pull out 7 weeks down the line.
Be very exciting. It is a very exciting. Any auction is exciting, and people do get kind of tense about. I've spent a bit of time in Australia. My wife's from Australia, and in the different states in Australia sell houses in different ways. But in Victoria, it is an auction outside the house on a Saturday morning, and the neighbours gather round, and the auctioneers. It's a piece of theatre.
Tell you what, I could see a TV show with your name on it.
I've tried, Alex. I've tried. I've actually developed the idea, and we got quite close of actually doing it live. Channel 4 we're actually talking about doing live auctions, and I was going to try and do 4 a night and buzz myself in between. It was,
that would have been amazing. I know a lot of people that have worked in the Australian market, and in some states, I mean, it's the predominant way to sell. So, we know it works.
Yeah, and people like it because it is transparent. It is quick. To watch, I've absolutely loved it. But
I think just for myself, having bought a couple of properties, the biggest thing is just the worry of what's going to happen. Are they going to pull out? Am I going to get gazumped? It's all of that kind of stuff that goes through your head. So security that something like this can bring might mean that people can sleep a little bit easier at night.
But in terms of the buyers, though, so the banks are asking for ever increasing amounts of cash deposits. So the buyer's cash is under pressure. If they're needing to pay the online auction fee out of cash, surely that also reduces their affordability on the mortgage.
I mean, I see your point, and it's a very good point. I mean, generally with the auction, we'll set, because the vendors or the sellers, are motivated, then generally we're going to set pricing at a level that's there to generate interest. So effectively, we're setting that buffer for the buyer's fee initially, and obviously if there is enough interest, then that is what takes the value up, and that's when we get the higher price for the seller.
You mentioned it suits a vendor on a house where there's high demand. I can see that, because if you've only got a couple of people interested in your house and only one of them has got enough cash deposit to in order to pay the fee, then I would question if, as a vendor, are you actually maximising the value of your major asset? Absolutely,
and it's a case of, it's almost like sense checking the buyers that are interested in your property.
Yes.
You're completely right with saying that. I think the high demand side of things is, I mean, we sort of have set up a sister service to effectively, off the back of what we're doing with the online auctions, which is something called a committed buyer service.
Okay.
It's almost to come off the back of a lot of the benefits that auctions brings, but almost bring a different terminology to it to make the benefits more acceptable to some sellers, but ultimately still operate off the fact that the legal pack's done up front. A buyer will put down a non-refundable reservation fee, but what it means is that the property could be marketed at a sort of more acceptable market value. But ultimately a buyer that does commit to it is still putting down that non-refundable deposit. So there's a lot of similarities, but the terminology works better for some people.
Okay.
There is that education about auction and property and auction property.
Yeah, but we are working in a more digital age now than ever before, and I guess what's been happening over the last 6 or 9 months has sped that up as well.
Absolutely.
People are more accustomed to it. They are more used to it.
Absolutely. And I think, again, if you were to take the word auction out of it, the actual process is so in line with the modern world, and it will only become more like that as people get to buying and selling through that route.
Yeah.
So for me, we are seeing more and more of those high demand properties coming to us from off, because of the fact that it's just filtering out that interest, and meaning that when we that interested party, can they commit to it, and can we have peace of mind knowing that they're going to complete on that property.
And with your 56 days, I mean, I don't know how your competitors work. Is 56 days a fairly standard? Because that seems like a good amount of time to enable people to sort their finances out, etc.
Absolutely. So the 56-day window kicks in from the draft contract being received. And, it is pretty standard practice for the online auction space to operate off those timescales.
Okay.
But the idea is to give that time for mortgage buyers to obviously be in a position to purchase and see that transaction through. So yeah, it's pretty standard across the board.
Okay. So a lot of your challenge, I suppose, as a business is actually about getting out there and educating both buyers and sellers that this is a workable option. It's a modern option, but it is a workable option for both sides.
Absolutely. And I think there's always going to be that, that constant education piece, just to make people aware of it entails and the benefits it can give them. But there is more spotlight being put on it, so I think we will get there.
Yeah,
I think for certainly, it works in any market. So on high demand types of properties, it can work really well when there is that interest, and the market is good, lots of viewing interest to filter out the right buy for that property. But also, if there is a point where the market dips or the economy dips, then really we can help people get sold, and we can ultimately get there.
I mean, it kind of it strikes a chord because of the speed and the certainty. It's not all about the money. It's about in this market, I really believe speed and certainty has quite a large financial value.
And there's so many reasons why that's important. Yeah. So I think you're completely right. So the 4 main benefits that we really talk about when we talk about online auction is speed, the security that we've obviously covered off. The low cost element comes about from the fact that someone can sell their property for no cost.
Yes, of course.
It's a free option for that seller.
Yeah.
And then value just comes around from the fact that we will set a starting price that will be visible on, the portals and online. And there'll be a reserve price that's agreed between ourselves as the auction house and the seller.
Yeah.
And the point that if it gets to that point, then they've agreed to sell for that property. But the psychology with auction is, with a starting price, the only way is up. Yeah. So how much is that market going to bid up to, and what are they going to say that property is worth in this market? Whereas I suppose if someone puts their property on the normal private treaty market for £350,000, people will often try and see if they can get a deal or cut it. So it's quite a nice different change of psychology with that bidding process.
So let's use that as an example. If a house was worth £350,000, you would list it at, so that would be the reserve price. You would list it at 325 or 30,000, and then it's up from there. But as soon as it hits over 350, it's going to be sold.
So generally we're working with people that want to get more interest in their property, and they ultimately want to sell for a really compelling reason. So often the pricing we set will fall just under what it might be on the market for currently.
Okay.
So ultimately, we work with people that might be bringing their property new to market, and we'll set pricing in line with the fact that it's new, it's fresh, and people might be interested nearer to the market rate. But we also work with a lot of people that might have been on the market for 3 months, 2-3 months. They're not getting the interest. They're coming to the end of their estate agency contract, and therefore it might be that a change of marketing strategy might help them get sold.
Yeah.
So therefore we work with a lot of sellers that have been on the market with an agent that it's not working, and therefore we can then help them check the price and try and get a bit more interest in it. But usually the pricing, as I said before, we have a RICS chartered surveyor that will do a desktop valuation on every sort of customer that we contact.
Okay.
So on their property, and therefore off the back of that, the starting price on a property will usually fall around 15% below the market, what it's on the market for. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to work out a figure that I can do some clean maths on there, but
no, don't worry. And
the reserve price will fall 10% above that. So it'll be slightly lower to stoke the interest, but obviously with the nature of the bidding process, that's when we take it up and above where they were maybe before.
Have you got any sort of examples that you could talk me through where it's worked particularly well?
Absolutely. So I always remember the good news stories really well, of course, but there was a lovely lady selling her property in Derbyshire. We agreed that we'd agreed a starting price of £65,000 with a reserve price of £70,000. Mm-hmm. And effectively, she would have been happy to obviously take £70,000. Now, we had a buyer that ended up...
You set the auction for 30 days from then?
30 days in advance to give people the time to view it, download the legal pack and put their... But the buyer, upon our contact with them, said that they were only going to be maximising out at £75,000. Okay. That's the maximum bid that they would go up to. So they put in their £75,000, left it a few days, and then someone else came in and were interested in the property. All of a sudden, with a day to go, we had a bit of a bidding war between those two. And in the end, the lady got £88,000 for her property, and therefore £18,000 above she would have accepted. So she was absolutely delighted, in tears on the phone. I mean, we've had an example really recently on a property in Walsall, where before it was in February before COVID kicked in. There was 147 viewers that attended an open house, and again, the winning buyer paid £125,000 for that property. Yeah. 7 weeks into the transaction, pulled out. So the seller would have been devastated. There was that much interest, and they had to be the one that let them down. Yeah. So what happened was that then came to auction with us. We ended up within the final 90 seconds of the auction, we had 33 bids from a number of different bidders. In the end, it was sold for £133,000 plus the buyer's fee. Great result. Secured £8,000 more than they originally got, with security of that buyer that's going to complete on that property. Great result.
So talk me through, so the end of an auction. So it is a time, there is a time limit, is there?
There's, so when someone signs up to auction, they sign that 90-day sole selling rights contract. So that allows...
Sorry, as a buyer, so I'm interested, I'm online, I'm wanting that flat and there's 15 other people bidding.
Yeah.
How am I going to get in there if there's a clock ticking?
Yeah, so there's a clock ticking, and you for those that have used eBay, there is some similarity with how that sort of dashboard looks and works, but effectively there is a countdown clock. It will tell you how long until the auction finishes. So we do see the great thing is, and we talk about the transparency, is we can see how many people have bid, but we can also see how many people are actively watching that property.
And I, as a consumer potential purchaser, can I see how many people are watching it?
Yeah, so you can see how many people are watching. So the psychology is that, as much as you've put in an offer, you probably know that there's 7, 8, 9 people that are still interested. So as the clock ticks down, and obviously an offer goes in, and that's when we start seeing a lot more activity as it gets closer to the end of the clock. So if, for example, it gets into the last 60 seconds of the auction and a bid goes in,
right.
the clock will extend again for a further 60 seconds and continue that until there's a 60-second block without a further offer.
I see. That's clever.
Well,
that's also fair.
Yeah, and I think the idea is we're trying to deliver a really good result in terms of what that seller gets for their property.
Yeah.
So to cut it off when other people were willing to maybe offer, again, that extending clock is the right thing to do.
Got it.
So,
That's
again,
really smart, because it gives everyone a chance to actually have a little think, because there's rather a lot of money on the table.
Absolutely, and it delivers such an exciting experience that it's absolutely fantastic. But we have actually probably 40% of the auction sales that we've had have gone down to the end of the clock.
Yeah.
But also we do actually have buyers that come forward earlier in the process. So, say that, for example, it's marketed for 30 days, but they go to a viewing on the 5th day of the auction within that marketing period, and they want to put in an offer.
Yeah.
Then it can be that seller, because of the motivation, is happy to accept an offer early, effectively close the auction and start that legal process a bit sooner. So we do get a lot of properties that sell prior to the end of the auction. But again, if sellers see that interest in the property, they might wait and see where it gets to.
And is it, in terms of the business of Go-To, are you using local high street agents to do the viewings, or do they come to you? How does that kind of tend to take shape?
Yeah, so we effectively, we manage the auction process and we run the technology. So we run the technology that sits behind the auction and the countdown clock and the marketing of that property on that platform. And then we have a really experienced and informative team that sit in our office that talk the clients, the sellers and the buyers through the process and manage that ongoing process through to the end of the auction and beyond. But we basically partner with high street agents.
Got it.
Who will obviously, introduce us to their sellers that they might be suitable for auction as well, and vice versa. So effectively, they will market it on their portals, their portal accounts, as well as carry out the viewings on behalf of ourselves as the auction house.
I think it's a really, really interesting model. Could I just finish up, if I may, and ask you, Alex, if you could give just a couple of tips of how best to use the system as a buyer and how best to use the system as a seller. If you were doing it yourself, any particular golden nuggets of preparation or?
So, I mean, if I was a seller, for example, then effectively I'm at an advantage knowing the benefits and what results it can deliver. I would look at the fact that what is my motivation? If I'm motivated to move, then I can enter into a process that effectively allows me to get a quicker transaction and ultimately secure a buyer that's going to commit to me, my property, and give me the opportunity to go and buy my next property head free with peace of mind. So, the great thing and one of the just clear benefits is having that legal pack created up front as well, to mean that transaction can move quicker. So as a no cost option, it's for me as a seller, I would definitely enter into that process. From a buyer's perspective, if they were to go on our website and you can see initially the properties that they can get hold of are attractively priced. So, it could be that they can get themselves a good deal in terms of what they're buying. But again, they're entering a process as well with a motivated seller. So effectively, they're going through the same journey of, as much as they're committing to it, if they want the property, then effectively committing to it is something that they should do. But they're entering into it with a motivated seller at the same time. They're going to get to completion as well. And I think one thing that's actually just come out in the press, within the industry press within the last 24 hours, is that there was a study that showed over last year, property sale fall-throughs has cost sellers £607.5 million.
All of that.
So effectively, out of nearly 1 million transactions that did go through, there were 225,000 fall-throughs. With private treaty, you might enter into a process where there's a 1 in 3 chance of a fall through. Whereas with online auction, there's less than a 4% chance of fall through. So it's just, it's
added to which, it's all the sleepless nights and the stress.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No one wants any more of them, do they?
No. That's really, really interesting, Alex. I wish you all the best of luck. I think it's we all need a bit of certainty and speed at the moment, and you're certainly delivering it at Go too. So keep on doing it. Very nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Phil. Pleasure to speak to you.